Hello and welcome back to Notes from a Scottish Author. This is the second episode. I thought I would do a little recap of what it's about, just in case you haven't watched episode 1, which would be mental because there literally is just one other episode to watch before this. But I'll do a recap anyway. I'm here on the on the banks of the Caledonian Canal, just outside Fort William. It is about 7 a.m. now. We've been walking since 6. I'm Barry Hutchison, aka Barry J. Hutchison, aka JD Kirk, aka various other things. I'm doing a 100-day challenge, 100-day fitness challenge, 100-day blogging, video blogging, vlogging, YouTube podcast thing. I don't know what it's called, but it's 100 days of making little videos like these, 100 days of eating healthily, exercising. I've done 6,000 steps this morning so far, and I'm only halfway. I have to go back that way, which means I'll have done 12,000 by the time I get home. Yesterday I hit 22,000 steps, I think, just over 10 miles. And the idea is that in 100 days we will look and I shall be svelte and healthy and immortal is the plan. I'm here with the dog. There she is. Quinn. See. Today I'm going to talk about one of my author names. Today I'm going to be Barry Hutchison. Yesterday I said I was going to talk about my various selves, but I thought that's going to take too long. I want to keep these quite short and concise. So today I'm going to talk about Barry Hutchison, and I'm going to do that back at my office. So with the magic of technology, come follow me now on a wondrous adventure to my office. Mostly because it's just started to rain. Here I am back in my office, as if by magic. It actually took me a lot longer to get here than it would have taken you, which would have been pretty much instantaneous, really. So, well done, I suppose. I'm here rocking my new lockdown haircut that my wife gave me. If you're listening on the podcast, you're fortunate that you're not able to see it. If you're watching on YouTube, I can only apologise. So as I said, I'm going to talk today about Barry Hutchison, children's author, multi-award winning children's author, I'll have you know. I wrote children's books for about 10 years. I've written over 120 children's books. Technically, that's not true. Technically, Barry Hutchison has written about 20, 25 children's books, but I wrote loads under pen names. Odin Redbeard, the Volga the Viking series. Can't remember any of the rest of them. Dexter Green, Goozillas, and other ones. I can't remember all the pen names. So I wrote about 120 kids' books over 10 years or so for HarperCollins, Penguin Random House, Nosy Crow, Stripes, and various other publishers. I've written fiction for children of all ages. I've written non-fiction. I actually wrote a book called George's Marvellous Experiments, which is a science book based on George's Marvellous Medicine, written by Roald Dahl. And if you actually look at the reference to that book or the kind of details of it in the British Library, I co-wrote it with Roald Dahl, which is my claim to fame. Despite the fact he died many years ago, me and him are down as co-authors on that book. I thought I would quickly talk about the first book that I ever had published. It is this one. It is called Invisible Fiends, if you're listening on the podcast. It's about a boy called Kyle Alexander, named after my son. And when Kyle was 3 or 4, he had an imaginary friend called Mr. Mumbles. And when Kyle is 12, Mr. Mumbles comes back and tries to kill him in a variety of horrible ways. There are 6 books in the series altogether, all focusing on a different imaginary friend. Kyle is the main character in all 6 books. These books came out in 2010, so they're 10 years old this year. The idea for this first book, or the idea for the series, actually came from something that happened to me when I was 6. Probably the single most terrifying experience of my entire life, in fact. And I thought I would quickly tell you about it today. When I was 6, a new boy came to my school, and his name was Derek. That's not the scary bit. I don't remember much about Derek. I don't remember where he came from. I don't remember where he went. All I remember is this one terrifying incident. Derek was coming to my house after school one day, but before we got to my house, we were stopping at Derek's house to pick up a toy or a book or a game or something. I don't know what. We were stopping at Derek's house anyway. We got to Derek's house and there was nobody home. Or so I thought. Derek ran upstairs to get whatever it was we'd come to get. I stood in the hall with my school bag on, waiting for him to come back down. And after about 5 or 6 seconds, I heard this thump, 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 and Derek came racing down the stairs. And he jumped the last few steps and said, "Quick, come and see this." And then he ran back up the stairs again. So I went racing after him, and I found him standing outside this door at the top of his stairs. And he grabbed me by the straps of my school bag and said, "Come in here." And he pulled me into the bathroom. And then he said, "Look at that." And he pointed into the toilet. And there in the toilet was the biggest poo I have ever seen in my entire life. And because we were 6, it was the best thing we'd ever seen in our entire life. And we spent a good 10 to 15 seconds just standing there pointing at it in amazement, mesmerised by the sheer scale of this thing. And after a little while I said, "Who did that?" And Derek said, "That was Jojo." And I said, "All right, who's Jojo then?" And Derek looked past me and he said, "That's him there." So I glanced back casually over my shoulder and I said, "There's no one there, Derek." And Derek says, there is. He's there." So I turned and looked again and still couldn't see anyone. So I said, "Derek, there's nobody there." And Derek's face went really serious and he said, "Aye, there is. Jojo, the big blue guy with the knife." At which point, I almost did a massive poo of my own. And I stood there frozen to the spot in fear, convinced there was a giant blue guy standing behind me carrying a knife who I couldn't see for some reason. And after a few seconds, my legs kicked into life and I ran down the stairs and out the front door. And I don't recall ever playing with Derek again after that. In fact, I don't recall much about Derek after that at all. And I was at my school reunion about 10 years ago now, and I asked there, I said, "Does anyone remember that guy Derek that came to our school?" Nobody else remembers Derek, which makes me think that maybe Derek was actually my imaginary friend, and that my imaginary friend had his own imaginary friend that was a massive blue guy who carried a knife and did enormous poos in his toilet. But somebody asked me recently, I was telling this story at school recently, someone asked me, do you think Derek was real or do you think he was imaginary? And I honestly don't know. But I really hope he was real, because if he wasn't real, it means that when I was 6, I walked into a complete stranger's house by myself, spent several minutes just laughing at their toilet, and then ran away crying, which makes me sound like a head case. So yeah, but that feeling of the terrifying imaginary friend standing behind me is what led me to create the Invisible Fiends series of books. They're all available now in all good bookshops and all that stuff. So that was my kind of first taste of publishing success. I had pitched it as a standalone book. I said, "I've written this book." HarperCollins got in touch and said, "We're really interested. Could you write 6?" And I said, "Yep." And they said, "Great. Can we have the outlines for the next 5 by 2:00 this afternoon, because we have a meeting about it?" And I said, "Yep." And came up with the next 5 books in the series. That's Invisible Fiends. Tomorrow, I will talk about Barry J. Hutchison, the evolution of Barry Hutchison, comedy sci-fi author. And then the day after that, I will talk about my other alter ego, J.D. Kirk, Scottish crime fiction author. So I hope you will follow along. This is day 2, as I mentioned earlier, when I was out in the canal. I'm going for 100 days in a row, so I still have a lot of days to go. I'm now 1/50th of the way through, I reckon. It's probably maths, isn't it? That's probably how it works. So, still got a big chunk to go, but I hope you will follow along. So subscribe to the podcast or to the YouTube thing. If you want to hear the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, it is available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and wherever else these things happen, I don't know. And if you're listening to the podcast, the video is available on YouTube. And if you go to the website, which will be set up shortly, which is just scottishauthor.com, you can find links to all these different things. So thanks for listening, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.